My name is Mohamad Hafez. I am a Syrian-American artist living in the United States, originally from Damascus, Syria. I am trained as an architect. I am not trained as an artist. So the tool that I'm most comfortable with is model building. Tools to build architectural models for our projects and so on. And it started in college while not being able to go home for about a decade. I got extremely homesick, and it just so happened that one night I was so homesick, I was alone, and I grabbed a bunch of scrap material and I started tinkering around. 8, 9, 10 hours later, I had built this architectural facade. I didn't realize where the time went, but I knew it made me feel good to spend this much time in detailing and trying to imagine the narratives of people that inhabited these architectural pieces. And in that sense, basically what took place is art therapy. I was too young and naive to know it was called art therapy or cathartic expression, but I knew it felt good, and I knew I wanted to make more. The turn point was when one of my own family members became a refugee in Sweden. Up until that point, I think the war to my immediate family, was something that's present in our lives, but still in the neighboring streets. When my own flesh and blood sister became a refugee in Sweden, and when my own brother-in-law rowed one of those boats across the Mediterranean, crisis hit the home smack center. So that's when I decided to utilize this tool that I had. I knew that it was able to express my feelings towards homesickness, and I believed in the power of art in building bridges and telling stories. And immediately I said, this is the best way to build bridges in a very divided society. And without me opening my mouth with a single word, art speaks louder than any person. So that's when I decided we should tell these stories. What happened with me is I had known these folks for years, and they're such powerful people that there were points about their lives I hadn't heard before this project. Like Farishte from Afghanistan, that I knew her for years, and she had single-handedly ran a secret school for girls in a basement in Afghanistan under Taliban to educate girls. And I told her, you know, I know you for years, how come this is the first time you're telling me? And she basically just shrugged her shoulders at me, and she said, well, I didn't think it was a big deal. So it's these moments that really, like, for someone that's immersed in the American society as much as I was, I looked at her and said, do you know what the stereotype of a hijab wearing Afghani woman is out there right now? I need to tell your story. Please allow me. And so it took quite a negotiation with her to allow me to tell her story, because there's fear, there's intimidation, and there's so much to deal with it. And the suitcase that we used for her story is her own mother's, actually. What I wanted to do is to give another story that is not in the news headlines, because typically they're focusing on the wars and the aftermath of wars, and absolutely that's there. But there has been a fatigue in the media of people seeing bloody stories and death and loss to build empathy, you know. There's something actually called Syria fatigue as it pertains to the Syrian refugee crisis. What I thought would work best is to tell these short stories to humanize refugees. and tell their own stories by their own voices, and to find that soundbite, the common denominator that a normal person in this society would find intriguing or would find similarities with that refugee. What I'd like people to take away is the same thing that caught me by surprise, is the realization that the human experience is very similar and very familiar. It might look different on the outside, but as a nation of immigrants, we're all some sort of refugees in one way or another. And this nation is not that old, so if you go couple clicks back, you would find that commonalities between today's refugees and yesterday's immigrants. And hopefully by building that common denominator, we would build the empathy needed to avoid having future xenophobic laws, racist laws that paint people with one wide brushstroke based on their passport, religion, skin color, etc., as we've seen in the past administration. My calling was to use this art as a form to build bridges between cultures. I find myself speaking to different audiences at the same time. In one hand, humanizing refugees and immigrants to a predominantly Western society, which I've been part of for 2 decades now, and I'm a proud American citizen. On the other side, I find myself talking to the newer generation that grew up not knowing anything about their roots and heritage other than war and destruction and refugee crisis. I'm speaking to those generations in the Middle East or outside the Middle East about their own architectural heritage, about their own wealth of history, where they come from. So the evolution right now is to build that heritage, to build that history in a miniature aesthetic, and kind of tell that story to the outside world. Because you gotta move on, you gotta build hope, you gotta rebuild, we're not people of despair.